Let's learn about the Modify tools in Adobe Illustrator. So this is the advanced toolbar. This is showing the Modify tools in the drawer. The 21 tools in the Modify category are tucked under 7 different tool icons. We will start with the Rotate drawer. So Rotate is the first tool. This allows you to place or rotate a point to center the rotation around a specific axis. The next one is Reflect. This allows you to mirror an object horizontally, vertically, or at an angle. The next tools are under the Scale tool icon. The Scale tool enlarges or reduces horizontally, vertically, or both. The Shear tool slants or skews an object along the vertical or horizontal axis or a specified angle relative to a specific axis. And Reshape enables you to edit a path organically while keeping the overall detail of the path intact. It can be quicker than using the Direct Select tool because you don't need to edit the handles. The next tool drawer the next 8 tools are under the Width tool icon. So the Width tool adjusts the thickness of a path and creates custom stroke profiles. The Warp tool distorts or deforms objects, including paths, text, meshes, blends, and bitmap images. The Twirl tool creates swirling distortion within an object. The Pucker tool pulls the vector object's anchor points outwards, while curving the segment inward relative to the object's center point. The Bloat tool pulls the vector object's anchor points inward while curving the segments outward relative to the object's center point. The Scallop tool adds additional points to a path to create a bumpy, ruffled edge. The Crystallize tool is like the Scallop tool, but it creates sharp, pointy extrusions instead of rounded intrusions, more like a splat look and not a ruffle. And the Wrinkle tool applies waves to a path without corners or angles. The next tools are under the Puppet Warp tool icon. Puppet Warp twists and distorts parts of artwork by moving and rotating pins. And Free Transform allows you to scale, distort, and shear objects. The next tools are under the Eyedropper tool icon. The Measure tool acts as measuring tape to measure width and height of an object, the distance between objects, or an angle. And the Eyedropper tool not only selects color, like in Photoshop, but it also copies appearance attributes from one object to another, including character, paragraph, fill, and stroke attributes between type objects. The next tool is all by itself. It's the Blend tool. This tool enables morphing between paths and shapes and creates color blends. And then we'll jump back up the toolbar for the last 3 tools under the Eraser tool icon. So the Eraser tool erases portions of your artwork regardless of the structure. It can be a path, a compound path, a path inside live paint groups, a clipping path, or a clipping path. The next one is the Scissors tool. The scissors splits path, graphics frames, or empty text frames at an anchor point or along a segment. When you split the path, 2 endpoints are created. And the last tool is the Knife tool. This cuts objects along a freehand path that you draw with the tool, dividing objects into their component-filled faces. So a face is an area undivided by a line segment. This just means that the Knife tool will divide into filled objects. Great. Let's go ahead and check out these tools in Illustrator. We're going to create a new file. Go to the print profile along the top, select letter. We can name this file Modify Tool Exercises and leave all the defaults and hit create. Excellent. So before doing this project, make sure that you install the font Evils, spelled E-V-I-L-Z, onto your computer using FontBook or just double-clicking on it and then right-clicking and installing on your system. All right, so we are going to, before we can play with the Modify tools, we need to add an object to play with. So we'll continue with the Wizard of Oz theme from the Type tool tutorial. So go ahead and select the Type tool And I'm going to select the Evils font. I'm just going to type in Evils in my character window there. Here it is. And I'm going to change my font to 150. So notice that my drop-down panel doesn't go to 150. So you can just type in 150 and hit Tab. And then I'm going to click on the artboard to drop some placeholder text. Now we're going to go up here to the Type menu along the top navigation bar there. And you're going to go down to Insert, we're looking for glyphs, 5 options down there, glyphs. This is going to bring up our glyph menu. So these are all the glyphs available in this font. We're going to choose this little witch right here. She's in the 3rd row for me, next to the cat. And I just double click on her and she automatically populates where my placeholder text was. I can close this window by hitting the X there. And then we're going to go to, I need to select her again. I'll just move her into the corner here. Go back up to Type, and we're going to create outlines for her. So we'll go to Type. Oh, I got the pinwheel. Give me a second. Unfortunately, I went over the font option. That's the second option in the Type tool. In the Type menu, and it loads all my fonts. I have thousands of fonts on my system. So Illustrator is sort of digging through those right now. There we go. Wow. Okay. So go on down here to create outline. So it's a little more than halfway down the menu there. It's also the key command is Option Shift and O. Great. So now you can see I can no longer edit this text. It's not editable. It's a shape now. All right. Great. So using the selection tool, we're going to duplicate this little witch. So we just hold down the Alt or Option key and you get your cursor to change to the double arrows. And now click and drag. I'm going to hold down Shift to drag her along that X-axis there. There we go. Now I'm just going to hold down the Shift button to select both witches. And I'll do that same duplicate option. So hold down Alt Option on my keyboard and hold down Shift to drag along. Oops, hold on. Doop. Hold down Alt Option, start dragging. Now hold down Shift to get all of them there. Great. And we're going to do one more witch. So I'm just going to click on one, hold down Alt Option, hold down Shift. Nope. Hold down Alt Option, start dragging, and hold down Shift. And now, so they're not perfectly aligned. So they're not perfectly spread out. So I'm going to select all the witches by clicking and dragging a marquee to grab all 5. Then over here in the Align section of the Properties panel, I'm going to click on these more options here. And down at the bottom where it says Distribute Spacing, I will choose the Horizontal Distribute Space button. So click on that, and now they're all spread out beautifully. So now I'm going to turn these little witches into 4 rows of witches. So I'm just going to hold down my Option key again since they're still selected. Click and drag, and I'm holding down Shift to keep them in line. Now I will click with my selection tool and drag a marquee around all 10. One more time. Hold down the Alt Option key, click and drag. And now I've got 4 rows of cute little witches. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and get started with the Modify tools. Let's click on the first witch here. And we're going to fill this witch. We're going to fill each witch as we go along so we know which one we last worked on if it's not obvious. So we'll click on this Fill swatch here. And then we're going to go to our swatch libraries, and we're going to go down to Patterns, and then from there choose Nature, Foliage. Okay, so that's the swatch library, Patterns, Nature, Foliage. Then from there we get this Nature Foliage panel pops up, and we are going to select down here on the bottom row, the 4th from the last, Wildflowers color. Let's go. There she is. Okay. So she just filled with this Wildflowers color pattern, and we can hit the X because, she likes to grow poppies, right? Great. So now that we have her filled, especially with the pattern, we are going to check out the Rotate tool, which allows you to place or rotate a point to center the rotation around a specific axis. So click on the Rotate tool. Let's find it here. It is under the Eraser in the Rotate tool drawer. Okay. And from there, it automatically places, there's a little cyan bullseye, like little target, not bullseye, but a little target right there for our rotation point. So if we were to grab her and turn her, she's going to turn from that point there. We can also grab the rotation point. Boop, boop, boop. I guess I can't. You can double click on this rotation tool icon in the toolbar to bring up the rotate window. And from here, we can change the angle manually. We can type in like 45 degrees. You can choose to transform the object, which it's transforming the whole shape right now. So I'm going to unclick that. And let me type in now, I just have transform pattern selected. I'll type in 100 and hit tab, and you can see the pattern inside of her rotate. So that's an option. Let me go ahead and go back to transforming the object, putting in a 45-degree angle. I'll uncheck transform patterns so that pattern stays where it is. And then you have the option below here to copy it, to make a copy of her, or cancel or hit OK to just, if you hit OK, it's just going to apply it to the one shape. For this example, let's go ahead and hit copy. Great, so it made a second little witch there. I'm going to use my selection tool to grab her and just move her off of the page. There we go. Let me try again. Oop, there she is, very cute. So that is how you make a rotated copy of something. If I go back to my rotation tool, I can click somewhere on the artboard to drop my new place that I want to rotate, and then click on my object. Nope, it doesn't work like that. Let's try it again. Click her first, then click the rotation tool. And I think before we start rotating, there we go, we can click and drag and spin it around that rotation point axis. So that's pretty cool. All right, and my pattern isn't changing because in my rotate options, I'd only have transform object selected and not transform patterns. So I'll hit cancel to get out of that. Great. Next one we're going to do is scale. I'm going to select the second witch, this little guy right here, and we're going to fill her with green. So I'll just pop out my fill panel there, and then I'm going to change my stroke to 5, and it's going to default to a black stroke there. Okay, so that was a green fill with a black 5-point stroke. So now let's click on the scale tool. This is going to enlarge or reduce horizontally, vertically, or both. So we have our object selected first before we choose these tools. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a tool. Let's go back to the reflect tool. Sorry. So underneath the rotate tool in the rotate tool drawer, we're going to click on the reflect tool. The hotkey for that is O. And this tool is going to allows us to mirror an object horizontally, vertically, or at an angle. All right, so we can just grab it. Nope, what's going on here? Oh, there we go. So double click on the reflect tool icon in the toolbar. Sorry about that. And from here, you can choose which axis you'd like it to reflect on. So the horizontal axis, the vertical axis, and you can also enter an angle in which you'd like it to reflect. Once again, you can choose transform objects or patterns, and you can also choose to make a copy. So we're just going to flip her horizontally and hit OK, and that's it for her. So for the next one is scale. Let's go ahead and choose the third witch. This time we're going to fill her with sort of a poppy orange color and give her a 5-point stroke. And then from there, we're going to go and find our scale tool. The scale tool is going to enlarge or reduce horizontally, vertically, or both. So we can do any of the following. We can scale relative to the object center point by dragging anywhere on the document until the object is the desired size. So we can just click on her and squeeze her or extend her. Okay, so that's one option. You can scale to a relative different reference point. Just like with the rotate point, we can grab this little guy, this little reference point here, and move it off of the witch and then scale from that area. You can maintain the object's proportion by holding down the Shift key as you're scaling. I already distorted her. Let's try to get her back to normal. There we go. Oh, no, it wants to keep her distorted for me, but that's okay. You get it. You can hold down Shift to keep her proportions locked. And you can scale the object along the single axis by holding down the Shift as you drag vertically and horizontally. So we can double click on this icon here in the toolbar for the scale tool. You can scale uniform like this. You can do non-uniform where you adjust just the horizontal percentage and you can adjust the vertical percentage. All right. You can also, let me just bring this back a bit. I'm going to say 60 here and 110 here. There we go. You can choose to scale the corners of the object. You can scale the strokes and effects, or you can choose to transform the objects or transform the patterns inside. I'm going to uncheck scale strokes, and you can see that stroke just popped back to, right now it says over here in my properties panel, it's 4.3. We started with a 5. But because I already distorted the witch before I came in here, my stroke did scale. So I can check it to scale along with the shape itself or to not scale. So I usually like to scale the strokes and effects because when you have like maybe a 10-point stroke on something, on an object, and you shrink it way down, that 10-point stroke still stays 10 points and it just takes over the whole entire shape. So that's not usually the desired outcome there. All right, so that is the scale option. So stroke and effects do not scale with the objects by default. You have to change it in your preferences by going to Preference, General, and then checking the Scale Strokes and Effects box. While using the Scale tool with the Shift key, you can start dragging at an angle of 45 degrees horizontally or vertically. For finer scaling control, you start dragging farther away from that reference point. And that'll give you a little bit more control with your mouse. So the next tool is Shear. We're going to select this fourth witch, and for this one, we're just going to change her opacity over here in the appearance panel to 50%. You can use the slider, or you can manually type in 50, whichever you prefer. So now let's select the Shear tool over here. It's underneath the Scale tool in the Scale tool drawer. Next one down, Shear tool. So this is going to slant or skew an object along the horizontal or vertical axis or specified angle relative to a specified axis. So we can just, to shear relative to a different reference point, we can click on this guy once again and move it. But first, let's see what it looks like with the reference point in the middle of the witch. Okay, so I'm shearing horizontally by just going left to right. I can shear vertically by going up and down. It gets really crazy. I can move my reference point. Come here. You got to grab it precisely. There we go. And now I can shear from that reference point. So that's an option too. Great. All right, next one we're going to do is reshape. So I'm going to use my selection tool, click on the fifth witch here. Let's just give her a blue fill. Any blue is fine. Great. So we're going to select the reshape tool, which is going to enable us to edit a path organically while keeping the overall detail of the path intact. This is a kind of tricky tool. I don't really use it very often, if at all, but here it is. All it does is basically add anchor points to a path so that later on, if you want to grab it, you can click and pull these different anchor points with your direct selection tool. Okay, so if I was to use my add an anchor point tool, then I would also have to activate the handles to pull them in and out, whereas this reshape tool automatically adjusts the handles as you to the new anchor points that it adds. All right, easy enough. Next one after that is the width tool. So let's use our regular selection tool. You can hit V on your keyboard to activate that. And we're going to click on this little sixth witch here, and we're going to give her a yellow fill. Excuse me. Sorry. A yellow fill with a 3-point black stroke. Great. So with the width tool, it adjusts the thickness of a path and creates custom stroke profiles. So let's go ahead and select that. It's this one right here below the reshape tool that we just used. So it's the first tool in the width tool toolbox. Now when you hover, let me zoom in for you on this. I'm hitting Command plus on my keyboard to zoom in quickly. You just click on an anchor point and then drag, and look at that. It just widens that path there automatically. It's pretty neat. You can also shrink it to decrease the width of the path. All right. So to remove a width point with the width tool still active, you just select on a point and then hit delete. Look at that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and click on this one too. There we go. So now what's happening over here, if we look at our properties panel, a new section shows up called width profile, and it creates a little profile that matches what you just made on your last line there. So if we want, we can save this if we like how this looks. So just click on that drop down menu right there, and at the bottom of that pop out, we're going to go to click on this add to profiles icon at the bottom middle there. And then right here, we can just type in which profile. We can choose what number we want. Oh, this already exists. What? How many which profiles do we have? Okay, and then hit OK. And now it's saved to our little library there. Pretty neat. So that's the width tool. Next one is the warp tool. So let's click on this next witch here with my selection tool. And I'll move her over. I'm holding down the space bar to activate the move tool there. And then underneath the warp tool drawer, underneath the width tool is the warp tool. You can hit Shift R to activate that. And this is going to distort or deform objects, including paths, text, meshes, blends, and bitmap images. We're going to leave the switch black for now. So you just push and pull the paths with the width tool. Boop, boop. With the warp tool. It's very easy. There you go. So whenever you have a brush like this show up, this big circle with the little target in the middle, if you hold down the Option key and then slide left, you can adjust the width of your brush. If you slide down, you can adjust the height of your brush. So you can do both, going up and down like an Etch-a-Sketch to change the size of that brush there, okay? So you can also double click on these to bring up the options. I didn't do that with the width tool, but with the warp tool, this is where you can manually adjust your brush dimensions instead of using that shortcut with the Alt or Option key. You can also change the intensity of the brush. You can change the detail and simplicity, and you can choose to show the brush size, which we do have selected. And then you can also reset it down here. So I'll just hit OK. Great. So that's the warp tool. I'm going to go ahead and slide on over to the next. Use my selection tool and select her. We're going to start with the Twirl tool next. So let's make her hot pink with a hot pink fill here and give her a 1-point black stroke. Great. So the Twirl tool is pretty cute. Let's click on that. It's underneath the warp tool in the toolbox there. And with this one, you just click and drag and make little spirals. So the longer you hold down your mouse, the more curly the spiral will be. So let's double click on this to bring up the Twirl tool options. Once again, you can change the size of your brush and the intensity. But here we have the twirl rate you can adjust, and the detail and simplicity. You can also, by changing the angle, it changes the direction of the twirl, and hit OK. I'm going to go ahead and hold down my Option Alt button and make a larger brush that way, and just give her a swirly down here. So that's really fun. The next tool after that, after Twirl, is Pucker. So let's use our regular selection tool. Click on this. Let's change this to a purple witch with the black stroke. And then select the Pucker tool underneath the Twirl tool right here. So the Pucker tool pulls a vector's object's anchor points outward while curving the segments inward. So the points are going out, but the paths are curving in. So let's go ahead and click on that. Wow, it's very bizarre. Wow. Let's try this one over here. There we go. I don't use this one very much. As you can see, it's kind of a strange tool, but I'm sure there's uses for it out there. Poor witch. Let's undo that step. I just hit Command Z. Keep her eyes intact. Oh, yay. area. I might want to adjust the intensity of this tool in the tool options. So there she is. Okay. Next one is the bloat tool. So let's use our selection tool. Click on the next switch. I'm just holding my space bar down to move the canvas over. And then let's click on the bloat tool underneath the pucker tool right here. Oh, hold on, let's change our witch first. For her, we're going to give her this kind of ochre color and give her a stroke as well. Great. Okay. So, I'm sorry. With the bloat tool selected right here, this is going to pull a vector's object's points inward while curving the segments outward. So it's basically the opposite of the pucker tool. I can hold down my option key to reduce the size. There we go. Oops, I went the wrong way. I want to go out. There we go. That looks really nice. Great. So that's the bloat tool. You can also double click on it to check out the options there. Let's zoom out. I'm going to hit Command 0 and hit my selection tool and select the 10th witch. This time we're going to use the scallop tool. Let's fill our witch with dark blue. Great. And go ahead and go into the toolbar, the width toolbar, and choose scallop tool. So the scallop will add additional points to a path to create a bumpy ruffled edge. So I'm just going to click on the edge and it scallops here. Let me zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. Whoop, see that? That's the scallop tool, very easy. It also has options. You double click. So we've got our regular brush options there. You can adjust the complexity of your scallop and the detail. You can add brush effects in tangent handles, excuse me, and brush effects with the out tangent handles. And so those are already selected. And hit OK. Great. So the next one is going to be crystallize. So right now scallop has these nice rounded edges. Crystallize is going to have pointy edges. So it's much like the scallop tool, but it creates sharp, pointy extrusions instead of these rounded intrusions. So let's select the next witch. I'm just going to give her an 80% gray fill. So I went down here to my grays color group, and I'll choose the one that says, see how the K says 80 there? That's how I know it's 80% gray. Great. So now let's choose crystallize and just move along this path again. So the best way to use these is to move along the path. Trying to do it from the center in isn't always the best option, but it does work. But I feel like, you know, you definitely have to touch the path for it to work. You can't just touch the fill. Great. And then we have wrinkle. With this witch, I'm going to hit V to select this witch here. And I'll just leave her as is. We'll go ahead and go down here to our last tool in this tool drawer is the wrinkle tool. So with this one, actually no, let's go back to our selection tool. I'm going to fill her with a gradient. So I'm going to go to my fill box, my fill swatch here, and then I'm going to go to my swatches library and go to gradients. And then from here, choose color combinations. Great. So this brings up this color combinations palette. I'm just going to pop this panel and dock it above my properties panel so it stays there for now. And let's go ahead and just choose the first swatch, which says green, or sorry, magenta, green, yellow, and fill her with that gradient. Okay, cool. All right. So with the wrinkle tool, this is going to apply waves to a path without corners or angles. So let me select that wrinkle tool. There it is. And now just run it along the edge. So these are just like very subtle little wrinkles. Let's double click on that to bring up the wrinkle options. We can change the complexity of it. Let's go ahead and bump it up to like 10 and see what happens. Hit OK. And now wrinkle this dress. Okay, so it's more wavy. Pretty fun. Awesome. So now we're done with all the tools in that tool drawer. Let's go ahead and click on the next switch. We'll give her the next color combination fill here, which is purple, green, gold. And now we'll start working with the warping tools, which are pretty fun. So we're going to work with the puppet warp tool. It's underneath the free transform tool. So we'll start with puppet warp here. That's the one with the little pin for the icon. So click on that. Great. When I click on that, notice that pins are automatically created in the different points. And I can hover over a pin to select it, and I see that it's selected because it has this circle around it. So from there, I can grab and pull this little witch around. Great. I can also grab this one and move it like this. I can hold down Shift and select more than one pin at once to move those at the same time. I can also just click somewhere to add a pin, and then I can move that pin around. It's really fun. You can also twist, to twist the object, you can hover your cursor over it and see how your cursor has a little arrow there. And then you can grab it and do a little twist if you'd like. All right, so that's the puppet warp tool, pretty fun. Let's go ahead and hold down my space key and click and move to select the next witch. Let's go ahead and choose the next option, which is the red, blue, white swatch in the color combinations panel for the fill. And now we're going to choose the free transform tool. So this is with the puppet warp tool here, free transform tool. Notice that this little panel popped up here. This is sort of a sub menu of the free transform tool. It defaults on the free transform option out of these 4 different options. So we'll start with that. So with the free transform, excuse me, you can scale, select one or more objects, and you can just click on a corner here. It's going to let me rotate it. I can grab this at the top here and shear it horizontally. I can grab it here and shear it vertically. I can shrink it. If I hold down Shift, I can constrain the proportions there. All right, so that's the free transform option. The other one is the constrain option. I gotta commit to this, it looks like. Okay, there we go. Let's go back to the, there we go. Okay, click, 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 click. It's not letting me, maybe because I already adjusted it. But if before you start manipulating it, you can choose the constrain option, and from there it will not allow you to distort the figure or the shape. Below that is the perspective distort. This one's really fun. This is going to pinch, when you grab a corner, it's going to pinch the other anchor point in with it to create like a 3D kind of shearing option. Okay, you can also go horizontally this way. So that is the perspective distort. Over here we have free distort. So this one is going to move the 2 lines that are connected to the one anchor point that you're grabbing. So it'll kind of flip it backwards this way. You can try this one and see what that does. Okay, so those are the 4 options in the free transform tool. Next, we're going to choose the measure tool. So I'm going to hit Command 0 to show me my whole screen there. I'm going to select this little witch down here and zoom in. So with her, let's go ahead and give her any of these colors in the combination fill. Let's give her a better one. There we go. And then we'll choose the measure tool. It is, let's see, where is it hiding? There we go. It's hiding under the eyedropper tool. So we're about 2/3 of the way down the toolbar. So here's the measure tool. And as soon as we click on something, it pops up this info window, the info panel. And notice that we can now see our measurements. The D is for the distance between the 2 points that we start. So I'm just going to measure the rim of her hat from one anchor point to the other. And then, so it says it's like 106 points. I can measure the distance between her eyes. You can measure anything really. We can measure her height. So I'm just clicking and dragging to create this little line here. So if you ever need to measure the distance between something, that's the measure tool. Very easy. The next tool is the eyedropper tool. Let's go ahead and click on the next witch. And we're not going to give her any fill color yet because we're going to use the eyedropper tool instead. So click on the eyedropper tool, and then from here, the eyedropper not only selects color, but it also selects appearance attributes from one object to another, including if you have working with text, it'll choose character, your paragraph. It'll also choose the fill and stroke options for that text, but it'll do it for regular shapes as well. So let's go ahead and zoom out, Command 0. I'm going to click on this purple witch with a black stroke, and it automatically applies that to my little witch down here. I'm going to click on the eyedropper again. The hotkey for that is I for eyedropper. It'll click, excuse me, it'll sample the gradient fills too, and it'll sample the patterns as well. So this is pretty neat. Here's a little fun little trick here. You can also click on an unselected sample object, sorry, an unselected object to apply a gradient, a pattern, a color, a mesh object to place with that. So you just hold down the Option key and click on there, and then it automatically shows that there. It's pretty cool. So it wasn't active, it wasn't selected, but if I held down Option, it's gonna then drop that the fill of the object that was selected. One more trick that's pretty cool is you can use the eyedropper to sample RGB colors from your desktop. So not even something that is on the actual within the Illustrator workspace. So if you just want to do that, you can select the eyedropper tool, click anywhere on the document, and then click and drag off of the document to your desktop. So if you have a picture on your desktop and there's a color there you'd like to use, and then without releasing the mouse button, you just move the pointer over the object on your computer and then release, and it fills it with your whatever you just sampled on your desktop. Pretty cool. All right, next tool is the eraser tool. I'm going to click on this little guy down here, give it a fill, and then give it a stroke of 3. There we go. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what the eraser tool does. So we have to move up the toolbar about a third of the way down to get to the eraser tool here in the eraser toolbox drawer. And then this can erase portions of artwork regardless of the structure. It can be a path, a compound path, a path inside of a live paint group, and a clipping mask. So for the best results, just use smooth single dragging motion. So I'm going to just slice off the top of her hat there, and it automatically closes the shape for us, which is pretty cool. Let me disconnect her hand from the wand there. There we go. So that's an option as well. So you can change the size of the eraser just using the bracket keys on your keyboard. So those are the keys next to the letter P there. And you can also double click on the eraser tool icon to bring up the eraser tool options. So if you're using a Wacom tablet with a stylus, there's all these amazing options here for you. You can choose for its defaults as being fixed, but you can change it to change with the pressure that you apply with your stylus. You can also use a stylus wheel. You can change the tilt and bearing and the rotation of it. And what's really cool, besides changing the angle and the roundness and the size of the brush here, is if you're using a stylus and a Wacom tablet, I'm going to hit cancel here, I can flip my stylus over and use it as an eraser at the end, like just drawing with a regular pencil. So it's pretty sweet. It's a really neat little and super convenient option. All right. So here's some tips about using the eraser tool. It's going to cut through all layers of stacked objects. So if you have stacked objects on one layer, then you need to select a specified object first to only erase that one thing. Or you can double click on the object to edit it in isolation mode. Or you can create a rectangle or square marquee around an object by holding down the Option key and dragging with your mouse. Or you can lock the other objects underneath it so the layers can't be disturbed. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next little witch here. Okay, I'm going to select her and we'll give her any fill. All right. And then let's give her a 5-point black stroke. Great. Okay. So next we're going to use the scissors tool. It's underneath the eraser here. The scissors tool splits a path, a graphics frame, or empty text frame at an anchor point or along a segment. So when you split the path, two ends are created. All right. So to use this, once you have your object selected with the direct select tool, you just move the cut path away. Oh, here, just click and drag along the path to cut it. Then from there, I'm going to use my direct selection tool and pull. Oop, I didn't do it. Let me try that again. Must not have had it selected. Okay, scissors, cut. Yeah, okay. And so you cut on an anchor point. I'm trying to. You're not letting me. Oh, excuse me. You don't select an anchor point. You select the path. So let's see if that worked. I'm going to actually, these lines are all going to be in a group. So I'm going to hit my group selection tool. And I should be able to pull this path off of there. There we go. So another option is you can just hit delete if you don't need that path anymore. So let's try that again. So I got my scissors. I'm going to click on the path, not on an anchor point. It's very touchy, as we can see. Okay, let me select it first so I can see the actual path. There we go. Scissors, cut here, and cut here. So because I have a fill, let me go ahead and turn that fill off. This is the first option here. Now it's not going to give me that strange filling effect that's happening. And I can click and drag using my group selection tool. Click and, oh, there we go. Click and drag that path away. Great. All right, last tool. Let's go ahead and click on this witch. We're going to give her no fill this time. We're going to click on our stroke option here and choose one of these gradients that's now in our swatches panel. And let's go ahead and bump up the stroke to at least 5. Great. I'm going to zoom in on her, Command plus. Awesome. So this is the knife tool. That's our last tool here. Come here, knife. There we go. So the knife tool cuts objects along a freehand path that you draw with the tool, and it divides objects into their component filled faces. Once again, a face is an area undivided by a line segment. So it just means the knife tool that you can use this to divide filled objects, or it will create filled objects when you use it. So you go to start at an anchor point. Let me try that again. I'm going to start at this little anchor point here, and I'm going to just draw this line across to this other anchor point. And now I have created 2 filled objects, but you can't really tell. So I'm going to hit my group selection tool, click off of the witch to deselect her, and now click and drag. And I popped that little hat right off. Pretty fun. So we can do it again. Let me select the witch right down here and then use my knife tool. And I can draw a path from here to here. If you hold down Shift, you can create a straight line as you're drawing. So that's an option too. Use my group select tool and click and drag. Oop. Nope, I must not have deselected her. Let's try it again. Undo, undo, Command Z. There we go. So I'm clicking on the anchor point and connecting it to another anchor point. There we go, got it that time. Great. And there you have it. That's all the modify tools with this one witchy exercise.